Who is Plexure? Plexure focuses on optimizing transactions in the real world. What that really means is we help retail organizations sell you guys more stuff. And we do that using IoT. So we use devices in the retail environments, we use people's mobile phones, we have beacons, we have Wi-Fi, we have digital signs, and all of those things are influencing customer behavior. They're communicating and giving the customers personalized experiences that results in increased sales in retailers. So some examples would be 7-Eleven and McDonald's. With McDonald's, we are very proud to actually host the world's largest loyalty platform in McDonald's Japan. There are over 25 million customers on that program on a daily basis coming into those McDonald's stores, and we're engaging with them live. We've done over $1 billion worth of transactions through the system in the last 2 years. So what we wanted to do in this section is really just show you the level of scale that you can actually easily handle in something like an Azure environment. So just to give context, FPOS New Zealand published some statistics to say their largest ever volume on a transactions per second was in Christmas Eve 2015. 157 per second. You'll notice the incredible white space I've left for ourselves. And the amazing animation, by the way. So effectively, in one instance, for one customer, we handle over 5,000 transactions a second, and that's actually also plugging into decision making. So all 5,000 of those events that are taking place per second were in the cloud and are being made on individual decisions. Did the customer arrive at store right now? Do we want to send them a push message? Are they opening the app? What did they buy last week? All of that is happening live in the cloud in those environments. Time now. So what we look at doing effectively for marketers is we want to create these personalized experiences. And what we don't want to do is handcuff the marketers to you tell us what you want, we go back to a dev shop, 6 months later we've produced what they want. The time delay between that is too long. We want to give the marketers all of the tools that they need to make their own decisions around these experiences. So we want to go to marketers and say, here is a beacon, here is a push message, here is a mobile offer, here is a loyalty point, here is a digital display. You design the experiences, and on the back of that, we can basically get the telemetry and metrics out of the point of sale system to understand if that actually generated more money. So effectively, what matters to consumers? Why do these retailers want this type of technology? And at the end of the day, it's around context is one of the key aspects to this. Context is about if I am, for example, on the beach with my kids, and a retailer sees that type of thing, it's an intuitive nature in humans that we look at that and go, what's appropriate to the situation? Maybe some ice cream. That's what they potentially want now. We might look at this and go, well, definitely not ice cream. There's a hot chocolate or a really strong coffee waiting in that opportunity. And basically in those two examples, the extreme is weather. So for the last few years, we've been able to connect to these weather services and say, this is the location, what is the weather, and make different decisions on how we interact with customers based on that information. So this is a live feed from the back of the room, and I think we're predicting probably beer is probably what the guys are after right now. We'll see what we can do to finish up so you guys can head off and get one of those. So with this weather and location, we're still guessing, right? I don't know for sure if you drink beer. I don't know if you really want a hot chocolate or not. We're basically trying to predict it. And what we're talking about today is moving this contextual world of trying to predict and more accurately predict what customers want to something which is actually a conversation. Imagine a world where your customers actually tell you what they want, rather than them having to go and discover it. So this contextual engagement is now a new platform where customers say what they want and you have an opportunity to react and give them the types of things that they're actually asking for. And if we look at the history of chatbots, this is chatbot level 1, right? DOS prompt, at least most of you in the audience would have seen a command line, especially if you're in a Linux environment, right? You have to tell it what you want to do, so it's a pretty good chat interface. But the language you have to learn, right? You can't just tell it in English what you want it to do. The other thing is if you get it wrong, it's a pretty painful outcome at the end of the day. So then we evolved to the user interface. User interface is awesome. You're basically presenting the customer with the most obvious options that they want access to. They can click on menus and they can find stuff. But sometimes you have to find stuff hidden away in a menu, and in a menu, and eventually you're going online and searching where the hell is that option that I wanted in my software product. So it has its place, but it's a different type of UX. So there's also websites. Websites are great tools, but again, it's up to the user to discover and find what they actually want. And most of the time, you'll end up searching the web to find exactly the outcome that you're after. So if we actually look at this conversations as a platform, what we're talking about now is chat is not just, it's not going to replace things. People say, oh, it's the new app and things like that. The reality is it's another channel that you will need to be communicating with your customers on. You still need a call center. You still need online. You still need app. But chat is now a new tool. But not just that, chat is actually now a new interface. So think of it as a part of your UX. Think of it as in a new interface with your customers. There's no colors, there's no shapes, but it is an interface that you're communicating with your customers. And so this new interface is effectively what you have to do. So my challenge to Rich during this demonstration is, hey, let's say I'm a marketer. I would love a chatbot interface. And I would love to basically give my customer the ability to order a coffee through my chat interface. And what we want to see today is if he can do that. Now, I'm going to give him one more challenge. Not only do I want my customers to be able to order a coffee, I want them to be able to tell me how they feel about my coffee. And I want to tell, they think it's bad, or do they think it's amazing? And we need to be able to tell the context of these three simple examples to figure out, are we ordering? Are we giving good feedback? Are we giving bad feedback? So I'd like to hand over to Rich to show us what he's got.
Thanks, Dave. As Dave kind of mentioned right at the beginning, I think if there's one thing to take out of these next quite small demos, really, is that it's actually really easy to get going. You don't have to be Rolls-Royce or Uber or some of the other illustrious, very well-funded companies up there to make the most of the cognitive services. It is very much about a democratizing of this kind of technology, and I hope you get that out of what I'm about to show you. So the first thing we're going to do is a very simple Hello World bot application. This is a template you can get from the Bot Framework site, Microsoft Bot Framework site. It has loads of really great resources. It's definitely the place to start, but there is a template for Visual Studio. We're going to call this Coffee Bot. And it has to go off and do some things. So if we could just flick over to the slides quickly while it's installing a bunch of stuff, I'll show you kind of where what we're about to do fits into the overall landscape.
We just flip to PowerPoint. Somebody's running for the button.
Okay. Does it have a laser on it?
I don't think so.
Maybe it does. Yeah. All right. So we're operating here for this demo. And this is about how you create your own code, and it's just, C#. There's actually an SDK for Node as well, if that's your flavor. And obviously down here, you can interact with your domain-specific APIs, other things that you've already got in your IT estate. For me, this is where all the magic happens, though. The bot connector is basically a bridge and a way of managing a bit of state for your bot. And it operates, it's sort of like a runtime for it, and it operates and can marshal messages between all these different channels. So you don't even have to think about how you integrate specifically with Telegram or Twilio or any of these other channels. It's pretty much there for you and you just tick the boxes. It's pretty amazing. So you sort of think of it as a gateway back to your code and you put your domain-specific goodies in there. I'm sure by now it should have loaded up on the other screen, so if we could just go back to the computer.
It's great distraction tactics there, Rich.
Thank you. I know it's a little bit hard to see, especially on this screen up here, but this over here on the right is very much just a web API project, very vanilla, there's not much to it. We're just going to have a look at the messages controller. And I think I can zoom that up. There we go. And I'll make that full screen. So what we have here is just a simple post. It's a post method on an API endpoint. And all this is going to do is take in the chatbot's text and execute this code. If you look through this, you'll probably spot it's not doing much. It's really just telling you how long the text is that you've entered in. we're going to run this locally. While that gets itself organised, we'll fire up the bot framework channel emulator, which is a way to basically emulate that connector box that I was showing you on the slide before. Uh-oh. Oh, it's already running. There we go. Try and get this nice and high. Just check that the URL that it's already got in there is actually the same as this. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Don't have to log in because, as I say, it's all running locally, which is handy. So let's see if it responds to us. And the answer would be no. 1 second. So we're just going to relaunch that. Check our addresses. Check that it's still going. Yep. All right. Dave, this is the bit where you do your tap dancing.
I need the computer for my next tap dancing trick. Just want to rebuild and try again.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So where this plugs in to Plexure after the demo is effectively what Richard is able to do is siphon off the context of the individual consumer and get to a point where he can hand over the context to the marketer to basically say the person's ordering a coffee or the person is giving us feedback. And then effectively what we want to do is drive that to the marketing system, getting that done, and then let the marketer...
Just a sec, Dave. Is there a separate internet cable here? Because the one that I've got is not doing the job. Or I could just go on Wi-Fi.
Steal Nigel's.
You'll need a dongly thing as well.
See if that works. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, we might just keep going.
Definitely going before.
Can you get to Lewis?
No, because there's no internet. No.
Unplug and plug in.
I'll try that.
Do you want to try my Wi-Fi?
I could just try the ASB free Wi-Fi. Oh. I think we might have something here. Hang on. Don't touch anything. Yes, we're going.
Hey!
Yeah. Survived. Yeah. So effectively, all this technology has told us how long our string is, which is wonderful.
That was really impressive for 15 minutes. Thanks, Rich.
Rock and roll. I'll set a breakpoint just to show that this is actually, if it already wasn't evidence enough.
That we didn't actually go to those PowerPoint backup slides, yeah.
So you can see it's really quite straightforward. It's really just passing through an activity, which is a certain type. You could drill down into that and see what it's sending you. But at the end of the day, what we've just done, and most of it was just getting the internet sorted, was to new up a project, run an emulator, and actually get a chatbot experience running. So now all you have to do is write a bunch of code here to interpret plain English. That's all you have to do. It's actually...
It's a great demo, thanks. It's up to the marketer.
Which, as you probably can understand, is actually quite hard. You could probably do something quite nice and simple if you know exactly what the person's going to type in, but as we know, humans aren't like that, otherwise testing would be really easy in OT. And we have to be able to create a way of being able to respond to what the intent of the user is. So I'm going to show you another cognitive service, which I'm a big fan of. Let me see if anything's still going. This is, I'm just going to actually refresh this because now I don't trust anything. This is Lewis, or as Dave likes to call him, Louise.
Yeah.
And it's the next line in a series of AIs. I think now that I've got to know it, I'm almost ready to call it an AI. We've got Cortana, we've got Lewis. I think the next one is probably going to be called Phil or Bob, if we follow that trajectory. But I've set up this app here called Coffee App, and this is a completely vanilla app. This is what you get when you basically new one up. And again, I'm trying to show you that there's not much preparation or science around all of this. We're actually just basically using the templates. That's how easy it is to get going. The only thing I've done is that under here is a key for Azure, so I've set up an Azure endpoint where it can bill me through, and an app ID. That's the only thing that's different from if you just knew this project up yourself. In here, we have the ability to create intents. So one of the intents is that someone's going to do a coffee order. And as we define this intent, we need to get a little bit of seed data to get it to understand what someone is going to enter when they're entering a coffee. So this one's easy. I want to order a coffee. And we're telling it right now, it's a bit like what you saw with Nigel's training sets. It's exactly the same concept. And coffee feedback. Your coffee is delicious. As a form of feedback. So now we've told it that those are two pretty good examples of what you'd expect, Lewis, if someone submits some text to you about what your actual intent is. So we're building up this little taxonomy. There's some other really cool stuff in here, like the concept of entities. So we can add that there's a thing called a coffee, so that it starts to understand that and pass what entities are referred to back in the text that we're going to see shortly back in the chatbot. And there's a bunch of pre-built ones as well, which makes things a bit easier. So the concept of a number might be useful if you want to take a coffee order, like I want 3 coffees or 5 or whatever. But it has a bunch of pre-built ones that sort of come from the Bing world, including things like encyclopedia, so it knows what proper nouns are. It knows how to pass ordinal numbers, so first, second, third, those sorts of things. We'll add a number in here. You can see down here that it's busy training. That's what has to happen before you can publish this model, and I'm very much hoping that this goes quickly. In the meantime, I think what I'll do is show you one that I prepared earlier. Just make sure it hasn't done it as soon as we stop looking at it. No. When you publish the model, you actually get this quite useful little simple query thing. So let's say if the first utterance I put in to seed it was, I want to order a coffee, let's give it something a little bit different. So I would like a coffee. It's with 52% accuracy thinks that I would like a coffee equates to an order coffee intent. And not only is that pretty cool, because it's not matching the exact phrase anymore, it's actually going outside that and using some pretty high-end computer science to figure out that you mean the same thing, but you're saying it in a different way. But the other point, just from a pure development point of view, is all of this is just an API under the hood. And actually back in Visual Studio, I'm going to show you the code in just a second, which interacts with Lewis, and again, very, very easy. I'll just see if he's trained. Yes, excellent. So we trained our model based on those 2 utterances I've put in. It realizes an entity, and we've added a pre-built one, so let's publish this. And that's all done. So now we're going to go back, and I'm going to stop this. And I'm going to replace the text in here, the code in here, with what you need to actually be able to interact with Lewis. First one is this line here. I can get rid of all of this. It's going to complain because it doesn't have that. So we'll just add it quickly. It's going to complain because it doesn't have a coffee dialogue class yet, so we'll just quickly add that as well. Now, coffee dialogue is actually where most of the work happens, but we're not talking about a lot of work from a developer's point of view. let me show you my codes. This is the app ID that was under the app settings. That's the subscription ID that's part of the Azure hosted part of it. This class is what is instantiated and passed into this whole conversation concept. And under it, you can see that there's a few intents. There's coffee feedback, order coffee, and none. And all that's really happening is that the SDK for Lewis, which is brought in as a NuGet package, is looking at that API that we looked at returning JSON in the browser, and it's just passing what's in there and deciding which of these handlers to call. So when it gets the top intent as coffee feedback, it's going to do this. Thanks for letting me know. If it can't understand you, it's going to put none. And if it thinks that you're wanting to order a coffee, then it chucks this in, order received. So now we're going to run this and see what happens. Now the reason that one's red is because I broke it in the debugger before, so ignore that one. I'll just make sure you can see it. So I want to order coffee. Still got a breakpoint set. We'll just carry on. Oh, great. I know that one. Just going to check my numbers here. I'm pretty sure I hit F5, but if you're convinced, I'll give it a whirl. I'll just rerun it and see what happens. I'll just check these numbers quickly, because they're usually the problem. They look okay. No, it looks exactly the same. Dave, now it's time to do your polka dancing.
Yeah, time to do polka dances. Why don't we just show where you'd add the line of code to hand over to Mr. Marketer?
Yeah, I suppose we haven't got that much time left, but I'll try one more thing.
Sure.
Just do your Twitters and stuff, guys. Aha.
Hey.
We're back again. Right. So what's happened here is that I've just said hello, which we haven't really taught anything about. So it's going for the none intent. So it says, I don't think it's coffee feedback, and I don't think it's order coffee, so I'm just going to say that. But what if we go, I want a coffee, order received. Aha. Nice. That's pretty good. Give me a coffee. It thinks that's feedback. Now that's no good. So let us go and fix that. We go over here. That one is all right. This is my trained model, you see, but it's not behaving very well. Okay. it looks like I'm not going to be able to get, it's a little bit mixed up, so I'm not going to be able to get back to actually the training part, but I'm going to show you, we'll see if it understands feedback in a slightly different way. So, your coffee sucks. And it's even happy about it. Your coffee sucks like Kumara. That one, I didn't even have to train it. You have to take my word for that now because I can't just go in and show you how I did that. But by the time it got to know what sort of sentence structures were represented feedback, it was able to interpret the fact that I was using the Maori word for a root vegetable as part of my feedback and interpret it correctly. And I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's really, really amazing. Let's see, one more. I like big bots. Still feedback. Very good. All right, so let's stop messing around. So imagine if we're back in the real world and we're not just playing with Lewis and teaching him Maori. Imagine that now we've actually got to do something with this stuff. So here is where you would take the types that it sends down, and it sends down things like the entities that were in there. You can configure Lewis to automatically complete a sentence for you. So if you say, I want a coffee, you can configure it to come back and say, how many coffees do you want? What type do you want? And by the time it's finished getting the information from the user through the bot, it will actually give you all of that as a nice packaged piece of data through these APIs because of the great job that Microsoft's done in these SDKs and interacting with the Lewis API. It is really easy to use, just to reiterate that. So we take all of that crazy idiomatic text that might surround a certain use case for this bot in whatever domain you're in. We can train Lewis very easily to understand what you mean, package up beautiful little API packets that we can then send on to our upstream or downstream systems. So what are you going to do with it, Dave?
All right. If we can go back to the slides. What we can do now is, what we don't want to do, as I mentioned, is hard code the journey after that. So we don't want to basically now go in and integrate with an ERP system and design the text message I'm going to send back. We don't want that stuff in code. We actually want to give that to the marketers. So effectively what we're saying is Richard in his code for each of those three scenarios would hand over that payload to our marketing system and say, you decide, here is the order, here is the quantity, here is the information that you want. If we could just flick through to the demo screen. We could flick back to the computer. So what I'm doing here is effectively creating a marketer's view in the Plexure world. And what we've done is we've surfaced Logic Apps. Logic Apps is the underlying Azure technology that drives Flow, which is released. It basically is an underlying integration engine and workflow engine. And what we've done is we've actually surfaced some things that marketers may want. So Richard's handing over the coffee order. I'm going, great, here's a Microsoft bot coffee order. In that order, it's giving me customer name, customer ID, product SKU, product quantity, and the reply to chatbot. And basically, the marketer can now decide what he wants to do with that order. The developer doesn't have to hard code this in. So effectively, what we're doing is we're giving the ability to basically say, great, I want to basically take this and I want to give it to Dynamics as an ordering system. And I can pass in the customer ID and the product SKU, and the product quantity. And next, now this is the important part where we want the marketers to really get involved, is they need to decide what they want to do with this. So effectively, we can drag in a Microsoft bot reply and say, thanks, customer, Richard, your order will be ready in, and the dynamic system is actually sending us back the estimated delivery time in minutes. And let's tell it what chatbot to go back and talk to. So effectively what we've done here is we've surfaced the ability to take all of these disparate APIs, give it to the marketer and say, you now decide on the flow that you want. But the hard part that Richard sorted out, that the marketer can't sort out, is the context. And once we know what the context is, we can give it back to the business unit to then decide what we want to do. So thank you for your time today.